let's not waste any time, brother. Let's jump straight into this recap here, and I'll dish it to you to start. It's like I'm Steph and you're Wemby from what
Cool.
we saw last night, man. What were your thoughts on the Spurs 125-92 win against the Mavs?
Dude, spectacular. Everything that we wanted it to be and more. Like, obviously, preseason, everything is a grain of salt, asterisks next to all of that. We haven't had a fully healthy team in any of those games. We're still waiting on guys. But, we still felt really good coming out of preseason undefeated, Jude. And we continued with that mojo offensively. We looked crisp. We were moving the ball, getting Victor to his spots, staying under control, handling the ball. It didn't matter where he got it. If it was down low, driving to the rim, step back threes, beating Derek Lively off the dribble. He had everything going. Steph Castle looks like he's ready to take another leap. The bench unit, KJ, had another strong game. And when push comes to shove, Jude, defensively, we look like a completely different team versus last year. There were moments where maybe the bench unit, we were a little scared in that first half. I think it took them a while to actually get a basket. Um, but I think that's just, a mixture of Dylan Harper with nerves and also not having the full rotation out there. But
Yeah.
we looked just un-effing believable.
Yeah, I think, there's a lot of different places that we could go with this game. And like we're saying with the preseason, as much as this feels like a translation, of a lot of the things we saw in the preseason, it is just one game. But
Yeah.
I will say, if you want to bring up the injury side of things for the Mavs with, Gafford, Dante Exum, and of course Kyrie Irving out, the flip side can be said for the Spurs with not only just, of course, De'Aaron Fox, Jeremy Sohan, and Kelly Olynyk, who we've been talking about. And regardless of where, Kelly Olynyk finds himself in the rotation last night against the Mavs with their double big lineups, that would have been an opportunity where he may get some minutes, even if he's not a full-time rotation player. And
Right.
it's kind of just like a spot minutes thing with the way that Julian's playing. It really feels like he's going to be in the rotation for sure. But like I said, even with Kelly Olynyk out, still Jeremy Sohan, another front court player out. And another name I want to mention last night, we saw some Jordan McLaughlin minutes, which was kind of a little bit unexpected with all the
Yes, we did.
injuries. But Lindy Waters, that was another name that was also out last night.
Yep.
And I think we saw Carter Bryant get some play last night. And I think that kind of had to do with size and defense. But I think also Lindy Waters could have been a name that we maybe could have potentially threw out there,
Mm-hmm.
kind of next to Dylan Harper instead of playing Dylan Harper at the 2 next to Jordan McLaughlin. But again, with that being said, another thing we've talked about this offseason is Jordan McLaughlin does have those playoff reps. So he might have been next in the pecking order, regardless of if Lindy Waters was hurt. But the whole point that I make there is I think the injuries kind of cancel each other out. But to
Mm-hmm.
get back to the overall points of the game, man, team defense.
Yeah.
We can talk about all this other stuff and we'll get into it, but team defense was by far the biggest difference for me. Consistency in rotations. There was one specific switch, Ethan, and I want to say this was like later in the game, and it was when they tried to switch Devin Vassell onto Anthony Davis, and it
Mm-hmm.
was like immediately Wemby was there right behind him, and it was an easy switch to where Devin could get to the perimeter on Clay to where he wasn't left out there at the top of the key, wide open for too long. Um, just our defensive IQ, awareness, and intensity is night and day from not just the past season, but like the past, basically since the DeMar era.
Yeah, 1000%. And Mitch Johnson deserves a lot of credit for that too. I don't know if you watched the mic'd up huddle that he had, Jude, where he
Yes.
was talking about embrace the mundane, the boring. Like that whole spiel, dude, had me fired up. And no disrespect is meant to Pop and the rest of the coaches, in the past couple of years, but that is like a different level of intensity that I feel like we haven't really seen in the past couple of years. So he's got these guys juiced and ready to go. And it's a common theme when you watch their pregame and postgame conferences. They continue to harp on defense, intensity, and pace of play. And those are the three things that really shine through the screen when you watch this game.
Yeah, that I'm sure a lot of Spurs fans were won over
Mm,
listening to that hot mic from Mitch Johnson there. As much as we got to see him all last year, we just know that the circumstances are completely different this year. This is truly his team, a full offseason under Mitch Johnson.
yep.
Yeah, I mean, him yelling, embrace the boring. Like you said, embrace the boring and mundane. Do it over and over and
Oh
over
my
again. Like,
god, yeah.
like have that like death mentality of like, even if you're up 20, play like you're getting beat by 40. I mean, that that's the silver and black to a core, man, but it's not even just the silver and black, dude. Like that is like every sports fan. That's what you want your team's mentality to be, whether it's football,
Mhm.
basketball, baseball, whatever. That intensity and that like consistent drive, an internal motivation. Um, yeah, man.
Mhm.
I know I'm going on a little bit of a motivational
No.
spiel there, but that definitely got me fired up too, man. But I definitely want to go through all the individual stuff. I know we got some comments. We'll touch on all of that throughout the episode today, man. But I feel like we're 6 minutes in and we haven't touched on Victor Wembanyama enough, man.
Oh.
I know you touched on him a little bit at the beginning, but again, his stat line last night: 40 points, 15 rebounds, 3 blocks, 1 steal, just 1 assist. But man, 15 for 21, 1 for 2 from 3. So just 2 threes that he took. That was something I noticed. And there was another stat that I saw. Let me see if I have it. No, I don't have it. I have a bunch of stats that I'm going to pull up for Wemby. I'll pull that up here in a second. But I believe he took, let me see. So he only took 2 threes. So that's 13 twos in that.
Mhm.
I saw something on Twitter that said that's the most that he's taken in his career, like most 2-point shots in a game that he's
Mm.
taken in his career. But the whole reason that I'm bringing up this 3-point thing is last year we saw the huge jump, and we know he still has the ability. But I think also the time that he spent with Hakeem, as well as one of the other things that we've been harping on for a couple years, it feels like now, Ethan, having those go-to moves and getting to
Mhm.
his spots. I don't think that there was one that he necessarily spammed in this game, Ethan, but you saw that footwork in the in between game, as well as just, his crazy length can allow him to kind of, be within a Euro step, of a
Mhm.
layup, at the elbow as well. I think you kind of get what I'm getting at. What were your thoughts on a lot of the moves that he had and the 2-point shots that he really emphasized in this game?
Yeah, I'm a footwork guy. If you're familiar with the show, you know I like guys that have good footwork in the low post. Kevin McHale was my favorite player growing up. He's got it all in the bag right now, Jude. And I don't know if you can call it his go to, but I did see a go to 2 specific, or I guess you could say 3 specific moves multiple times, and it was from the post going to the middle of the floor, like near the free throw line, fadeaway jump shot. He did that a couple of times. And then going baseline, floater off the glass. He hit that
Mm-hmm.
a couple of times. And then the one that he is not necessarily a shot, but something that he has clearly perfected is the step through. Because he can
Yes.
he can use the step through, doesn't matter where he is on the court, at the 3-point line. If he uses the step through, he's getting to wherever he wants. Baseline, at the rim, free throw line, it doesn't matter. And he has all the angles, you can clearly tell, and the confidence to stay under control. I feel like last year, the year before, he was rushing a lot of shots, trying to do too much with his handle. Now he knows, keep the ball up high, use those pivot feet, step through, and he
Yep.
gets pretty much any open look that he wants. So that to me is his bread and butter. That is his offense. You can clearly tell he's stronger. He is not settling for jump shots. He is pushing to the rim on guys like Anthony Davis and Derek Lively, getting them into foul trouble. I think they both had 4 in the first half.
Yep.
And you can say the refs were a little ticky tack.
They
Sure.
were.
I don't know if any of these weren't fouls
It
though.
was
Like you
both
could,
sides,
yeah,
even either way.
they were calling it really tight, and I think by the book they all were fouls. I don't think any of them were like phantom calls necessarily. The 3-point shot, he was under his feet, but he was putting them through the work, dude, and 0 turnovers, Jude. I saw the stat. He's the 3rd guy, maybe it was the 4th guy to have 40 points, 15 rebounds, and 0 turnovers. I don't know if that's a stat you're pulling up.
I thought I was trying to see it. I don't think either of
I don't
those
think it
were,
is.
but I know what you're talking about. I think it was like
It was
him.
Shaq, Moses Malone,
Yeah,
Anthony
maybe Will.
Davis,
Okay, yeah.
and him. So then that's really really good company to be in. And one of those guys, he was working, putting Anthony Davis through it. I saw a meme the other day or yesterday, and it was I wonder if Anthony Davis's welcome to the NBA moment was last night
No,
at 32 years old. And that's a good way to put it.
I think 7173 Alex says there were a couple of Tim
Hmm.
Duncan coin shots that were bank shots specifically, and I
Hmm.
definitely saw those as well. But yeah, to pull up these stats that I had, fun fact for those of you guys on podcast who didn't hear this earlier, there have been 40 point season openers in NBA history. Wemby was the only one to do it in under 30 minutes.
Oh.
So there's some history for you. He is the only player with multiple games of 40 points, 15 rebounds, and 3+ blocks before 22 years old, including Shaq. It's just him and Shaq. So again, more just like you could say 2 of 2 there.
Mm.
And then most points by a Spur in a season opener. Victor edged out George Gervin, who had 39, and now he has 40. And another thing I'll bring up, Ethan, I'm thinking of this on the spot. I don't know. A lot of you guys who have listened to the podcast have maybe kind of found out that my dad grew up in New Orleans. And the reason that he was a Spurs fan, even though he was living in New Orleans at the time, is because the Jazz, who were originally in New Orleans, that's why they were called the Jazz, had moved to Utah. And I want to say this was still like ABA era. But regardless, you see George Gervin getting 39 in 1977. My dad would have been 12 years old when that game happened. And I bet you probably listened to it on the radio. So anyways, kind of ironic, kind of how the
Mm.
generations here. He grew up watching Iceman. Now I'm seeing Wemby kind of
Mm.
break that record. That's just kind of a cool little note there. But another note on Spurs history, and this was one that, man, this was in the third quarter when this happened, but it just made my heart warm. There are two Spurs in Spurs history, Ethan, that had 30 and 10 in a season opener, and it's Victor Wembanyama and Tim Duncan. And if that isn't like an omen to the era that we're stepping into, dude, I don't know what is.
Yeah, dude, we've been really blessed to go from Timmy to just like a brief, 6-year period here of a little bit of mediocrity and substandard ball to now having Victor Wembanyama. It's good to be a Spurs fan.
Dude, especially considering like we started this in 2021. We
Yeah,
basically started this at the beginning of the rebuild. So to get to this point, it's definitely feels like icing on the cake. But one thing I meant to say earlier, this is just one regular season game.
true.
There's a lot of season to go. Robert Ball brought this up earlier. He says the Mavs don't have any real playmakers at the moment. You know, other than AD out there, I think Cooper Flag will definitely turn into a playmaker. Is there
That's
anybody that I'm
that's their
missing?
own fault, in my opinion. They got 3 guys that can play point guard, and they played two
That's
and a half
true.
of them. I mean, D'Lo had 15 minutes. Yeah, he played kind of poorly, but I think they should have started D'Lo.
You're
Ryan
right.
Nembhard's a good rookie. He's got some playmaking. And then Jaden Hardy he's just trash. He's been with the team for like 4 years. Like surely he has some playmaking ability. So I think they're just trying to shoehorn Cooper in there, get him comfortable. I don't think it fits personally. To me, it's like right now, it's like point Jeremy. Maybe in like 2 years, Cooper Flag is elite at point guard. But right now, I think they misused him against the Spurs. It didn't help that we had Steph pressuring him the whole time, and then you have Victor looming at the rim. Like they kind of set him up for failure.
And that's literally what Chuck said at halftime, or I
Yeah,
don't know if it was
yeah,
post game or halftime, but it was one of those moments on Inside the NBA. But yeah, the one thing I will say, dude, I mean, I think we're definitely going to play better offenses, you
yeah,
know, for
for sure.
sure. So I still think we've got some things to prove defensively. But one man I'll mention that I noticed on defense last night, he had 2 steals. Devin Vassell, dude.
Yeah,
And I know you can say he's playing a washed Klay Thompson, and that's what he's supposed to do. But regardless, maybe there was a lapse here or there. You could say the same thing for Keldon, but I would say overall, his individual defense was probably the best I've seen in a regular season game from him. I mean, I don't know if I want to say his entire career because there's maybe one that I could point out there, but in a season opener that I can remember, this is, I feel like, the most defensive impact I've seen from Devin, not just on an individual basis, but like being connected with the team. And there's other guys on the team that could be mentioned for as well, like
hmm
Julian, like Keldon.
yeah. I actually think this was a good game from Devin. And if you just look at the box score, you might not think so. Like, sure, inefficient, still only hit one of his 4 threes, but the shots that he did hit kind of came in a timely manner because our bench offense was struggling so bad, and Mitch reinserted him into that lineup, kind of proving our point that maybe he's a 6-man role, and he immediately started creating shots for himself in that mid range, getting some easy looks, and honestly looked pretty smooth. So 6 of 14, maybe not the best efficiency, but I still think this is a solid game from him. And then defensively, like you said, he and the rest of the backcourt guys, Steph, KJ, um, Dylan Harper, their intensity, Julian Champagnie, their intensity was really, really good against the Mavericks too.
Definitely better than years past, for
Yeah,
sure. For sure. And the other thing I'll say about Devin here, dude, it's so funny. We look at the field goal percentage, and I have the same thought. I think a little inefficient. But if he makes one more shot, technically he's 50%. And
sure.
again, Ethan, this goes back to the point we were making in the preseason. What's his efficiency on 2-pointers in this game?
Let's see. Oh yeah, 60%.
You,
Yeah,
you
he
see what
played
I'm
well from two. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and like you said, the shots he hit were timely. I mean, yes, you'd like to see him make one more three, maybe make one more bucket, but really, like we're getting super nitpicky here with
Yeah.
Devin, and especially when you have Stephon also going off for 22 as well. We can go ahead and just slide into him here, man. Oh, pause, major pause. But he was
There
right
you go.
below him on the box score, but 22. 7 and 6 with 2 steals, a big part of being the defensive anchor on the perimeter for us, and holding Cooper Flag to 4 of 13 shooting in his NBA debut.
Yeah, defensively, he was elite, trying to stop Cooper Flag, pressured him the entire game, got out in transition with those 2 steals. Yes, he had 5 turnovers, and we will continue to harp on that. That's obviously not great, especially from your starting point guard right now. But everything else that he did was exceptional, minus the free throw line. I don't really know what happened there. Last year, I think he was 74%. That last night he looked really bad from the free throw line. Let's chalk this one off as just a bad night, and we'll move on because otherwise he shot pretty well from the field, and was getting really good looks for us.
Yeah, he had a nice little mid-range jumper there at one point on the elbow. It did kind of bounce in, but still that was smooth, kind of in motion. But I still would say the majority of his scoring, was kind of that downhill,
Yes.
at the basket, being physical, and you see that with the 10 free throws as well. You'd like to see that percentage go up, but he just did so many other things that were so important to winning last night that you're able to kind of like, hey, he can improve on that. And again, a second year player, as much as our standard for Devin. Oh my Lord. Our standard for Stephon is very different than Devin and Keldon and Jeremy and all these other guys that we've been talking about. It is still his second year. So we'll
Hmm.
give him some grace here to improve that free throw percentage. And it also just may be, and I don't want to put this, box on him in his second year again, but shooting just always, that might always be something for Steph that's just a little bit of a struggle when you just consider his play style and makeup.
Yeah, and you know what? He does everything else so great that I'm willing to overlook that because it's not just going downhill and getting easy baskets, but it's what he did, creating open looks for others, putting pressure on that Mavericks defense. And as much as Victor got those bigs in foul trouble, Stephon was also getting them in foul trouble. So if they can both continue to put immense pressure on that rim, it just opens up everything else for everyone, the rest of the team.
Yeah, like you said, the rim pressure, you can see it. And I
Mhm.
actually saw that in a Devin press conference. I don't know if it was preseason, like at media day, or if it was during the preseason. I can't exactly remember. But he was talking about how the guys that we have on the roster, the rim pressure that they can bring, and the shooters that we have outside of them, and that's without even mentioning Victor.
Mhm. You know what I like, Jude, is our starting lineup has, right now at least, Steph is a hammer, Devin's very finesse, and then you have Victor, who's everything. And off the bench, you have KJ, another hammer, Dylan Harper, who's finesse, and Luke Kornet, of course, the guy we haven't mentioned yet, who's obviously everything and more. So
Yeah,
they kind of mirror each
absolutely.
other.
Absolutely. And we'll get into those guys here in a second, but do want to shout out Chris in the comments from Spurs Spotlight. Y'all go check out all of his stuff and subscribe to him, of course. But to get to some of the other guys, what you just mentioned the bench a little bit. And like you said, Ethan, in preseason, maybe we shouldn't expect Luke Cornett's statistical impact to be what we saw in preseason, but just being that big body, being that physical presence off the bench, forcing misses on Anthony Davis a few times, and some of the other bigs on Dallas that, in the past would have been Sandro Mamukelashvili or, Jeremy Sohan guarding those guys. What were your thoughts on Luke Cornett's Spurs debut in the regular season?
It wasn't beautiful because he got in foul trouble pretty quickly. but we didn't really need him to do much. Like we didn't need him to be that impactful. He still managed to get the 4 rebounds, 3 assists. I think as a screener continues to be invaluable, creating open looks for other guys, and as a ball as kind of a playmaker in that pinch post,
Yeah.
but not a super flashy game. I think he'll definitely have better ones down the line.
Yeah, but here's the thing, dude. I still felt like his impact was felt. I mean, because think about the easy buckets that they would have been able to get
It's
if we
true.
didn't have Luke Kornet in the game. Did have 2 blocks. Again, not the craziest statistical game, but like you said, dude, all we need is 16 to 15 minutes to give Victor some rest and like
Mhm.
some reliability. And here's the thing, as we mentioned, at the beginning of the game, you touched on this a little bit. We kind of had some lulls from the bench in the beginning until kind of maybe the end of that second quarter when we got that 9-point lead heading into halftime and then just kind of ran away with it for the rest of the game. I think the defense that we had on the bench, a big part of that being Luke Kornet in the
Yeah.
interior, was a huge aspect in not letting, the Mavericks like run away and build like a 10 to, a 7 to 10 point lead, kind of while that the bench was on the floor and they weren't able to score points. And again, you can mention the Dallas's injuries, and I totally understand that, but you can also say the same thing for us because our bench rotation is going to get better and have more firepower, when we get our potential 3 rotation guys back as well.
1,000%. Good point to mention the defensive part. Yeah, that obviously is not going to show up on the box score other than the 2 blocks, but as a deterrent while Wemby's on the bench, absolutely much better than what we were in the last couple of years.
100%, 100%. Did get 9 minutes of Carter
Mhm.
Bryant. Obviously, nothing crazy on the stat sheet, but here's what I'll say, Ethan. Because of the injury circumstance that we're in right now, last night we were kind of running a mixture of like, obviously, Harrison Barnes was starting at the 4, but off the bench, it was like KJ or Julian kind of. And I
Mhm.
felt like at the time that we put Carter Bryant in the game, as much as it was just kind of that 9-minute run, or I think it might have been twice that we subbed him in.
Yeah.
Um, I think we were kind of struggling a little bit with the size at that point. So I felt like throwing him out there as much as, you weren't asking him to do a ton offensively. The point is we weren't asking him to do a ton, but he did his job and mitigated a problem like that needed to be addressed at that point of the game for the bench specifically. And I also want
Mhm.
to say he had some pretty decent defensive one-on-one possessions as well.
Yeah, what I thought when Carter came into the game is honestly, I was like, why didn't we think of that he would have meaningful minutes right off the bat with Jeremy injured? Because like he kind of fits that mold off the bench that Jeremy would. Obviously, we think Jeremy's a little bit further along developly in his
Development wise.
development. Yeah,
Yeah.
in his development. But yeah, I liked what I saw from him. He only took 2 shots, but he didn't look lost. He looked comfortable. He didn't look any more shaken than he did in preseason. I was pleased with what he was able to do.
Chris says we need to see Cornette ISO Zach
Please,
Collins. That's a good one, Chris. That's a good one. The real Spurs fans will understand that one. We also got people talking about the chance of MVP for Wemby in
big
the
time.
Mavs house. And then later joined by some Mavs fans, he was saying. And then here's the part. This also warmed my soul. Hearing the loud "Go Spurs Goes" chants. And Wemby noticed too and led them for a bit. He was clapping on the bench, like in rhythm of the "Go Spurs Go." To do that in somebody else's stadium, as much as it is another Texas team, again, it was just a perfect night for Spurs fans, dude. It really was. Like, knock on wood, there's so much season left. This is there's a lot of circumstances and context surrounding this Mavs team. But yeah, dude, that was just awesome, and it got me so excited. But to continue back to the game, Ethan, let's talk a little bit about Keldon Johnson as well. You look at the box score and say you didn't watch this game, you'd be like, oh, he played just like he did in preseason. Actually, it was a little bit different. He didn't really turn up until later in the game.
Mhm.
Kind of the third quarter, I believe, is where he scored
Yep.
all of his points. And still, again, efficient, 5 for 6, hit 1 3. But the thing that I loved about Keldon, dude, early in the game, I'm noticing, okay, he's not scoring. It doesn't, I didn't notice anything bad, but I didn't notice anything at all, really.
Mhm.
But then
Yeah.
I go look on the box score, and this is like midway through the second quarter, and he's got 4 rebounds and 2 assists. And I know we've been Keldon homers for forever, so it's like I'm prone to harp on the good about him, but still, it was like in that instance, I was like, he's finding ways to contribute, and he didn't take a single shot. Like that's another night and day thing from the Keldon we saw last year. his shot selection and, like you said, kind of that off-ball role that he's taken on now.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll go on a rant here, Ethan. Just bear with me. There was another comment they made, the broadcast, and they were talking about how they talked to Mitch Johnson about Devin Vassell and Keldon Johnson specifically. And what Mitch Johnson said was it's not easy to have like your role change on the same team and like have to adjust to it year to year, like to have it change drastically and you're in the same place. And that's
Mm-hmm.
happened multiple times for them. And that's something we've been harping on for a while. And I definitely get to an extent how that's, can be excuses, and with the age that they're at, like they gotta, they gotta snap into form, and this is it. And the Spurs are trying to win now. But it was nice to hear that Mitch Johnson had that perspective to know, like, okay, hey, there was like something we were kind of getting at there with how everything was switched with them. But anyways, to get back to Keldon, like I was saying, it was a night and day switch whenever it came to the shots that he was looking for and just his shot selection overall, as well as his role.
Yeah, I love that he wasn't forcing anything. Like the offense wasn't coming to him. He wasn't getting easy looks, so he wasn't taking the shots. And I love that. And the rebounding thing, not just getting easy rebounds that bounced out to him, but fighting for extra possessions, going up physically against AD and Derek Lively. Like he brought the energy to the bench when we couldn't score, and then Devin was able to kind of help us out in that first half. And then he got going in the third quarter, which is great. And I think a good example of that, I don't remember at what point in the game it was, Jude, but
I think I know what you're about to say. Go
they
ahead.
inbounded the ball to him.
Okay.
I've never seen him do this. They inbounded the ball to him, and he took like 2 dribbles, and then he just gave it up. I think to Dylan Harper and ran to the corner. When has Keldon never really done
Yeah.
that? If he gets the ball, he's gonna try and create something for himself, or put pressure on the rim. I think he's completely satisfied is the wrong word, but comfortable now
Yeah.
in what is expected of him, and he is flourishing as a leader and as an energy guy in this new role.
And to that point, not to harp on this for the 1,000th time, but it's like it's hard to drill out of somebody who's averaged 22 points in a season,
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, don't do that anymore. Even though we told you, like, take as many shots as you want, and you're the
Mm-hmm.
guy at one point, like, that's not the case anymore. And that was another big thing in that specific, point that they were bringing up on the broadcast. They were talking about how, hey, like, and they actually made a mistake. They said both of them had averaged 20 points before in a season. And I want to say that Devin got close, but it was
Yeah, I
like,
think he was 19 or
yeah,
18.
yeah. So, I mean, it wasn't that far off, but I get the point that they were getting at. But still, to hear that point, I was like, okay, I'm not crazy. I'm not the only person who looks at this and is like,
Mm-hmm.
what's going on here? But it's super exciting in one game to see them both kind of fitting into those roles. But other guys who fit into their roles last night that I kind of wanted to talk about and have very similar roles are Harrison Barnes and Julian Champagnie. Not the loudest games of all time, Ethan, but I would say that both of them did their jobs last night.
They each hit a 3, and they didn't really detract from anybody else. That's all you can ask for. I think you'd like to get maybe more looks for Julian, especially with how hot he was. But it looked like the Mavericks were really playing tight on the wings,
Yeah.
which I guess makes sense if you think that you're going to double team Victor. But it wasn't working. Then Victor just continued to feast and beast inside. So we just didn't need him to do anything super special. But I also don't think they took anything away from us.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say solid on ball defense from
Mm-hmm.
Julian as well. He got a steal in there. And nothing else too crazy on the box score there, but kind of similar to Keldon, not doing anything to hurt us either.
I will say HB. I can't. Early on, he had the ball, and like they were denying our guys coming off screens on the wings, and obviously he wanted to do a handoff, but we couldn't get to him. So like 10 seconds went off the shot clock, and he just like decided, okay, 2 dribbles, fade away, mid range jump shot, cash on PJ Washington. And I was like, yeah, yeah, throwback to old school Harrison Barnes, man.
That was him in Dallas, dude.
That was him in Dallas. Yep.
Okay, one other note that I remembered on Devin and Keldon, and this is the final thing on him. There was a point in the game, it was second or third quarter, it was the middle of the game, where we were offsetting like the scoring load. Like we were noticing that Wemby was going off, but the bench needed a little bit more scoring. So we kept Keldon and Devin off the floor when Wemby was on the floor. And it was kind of a little bit frustrating at the time because I was like, okay, Devin actually would be nice here to just kind of have somebody else on the floor who can get a bucket. But then when I saw what Mitch was doing, I was like, okay, we've been struggling on the bench to score. I see what he's doing here. And with Wemby, even now, he could still 1v5. I hate to put it that way, but especially with the freaking injuries that we had, that was kind of the best predicament that we could go with. So I like that little adjustment from Mitch there as well. There were a couple different things that I saw from Mitch last night, like in-game adjustments or timeouts, or even choosing like not to call a timeout.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like he read the game very well. Again, just one game. But I've really liked what I've heard from Mitch in all the press conferences, dude. I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
say we were necessarily skeptical, but Mitch kind of came out of nowhere as much as he was an assistant on staff for forever. So I feel like we're getting to know him more. And the more that I see from him, dude, the more that I'm just like this. I love his mentality, dude. I love
Mm-hmm.
the principles that he's instilling in this team.
I like his demeanor. Like he's so cool, calm, and collected, but then can get fiery in the huddle. It it never feels like he's lost for words, and he's always got something churning behind
Yeah,
his eyes. You know what I mean? And I like
for
that in a head
sure.
coach. He's not scripted in his answers.
No, and another thing, you even notice that when you see him on the bench, like he's
Mm-hmm.
just sitting there like this, and we're up
Just
20.
thinking.
But exactly, I'm like he's thinking what we can do better or what we can take from this. Yeah, definitely very cerebral for sure.
Mm-hmm. It's a good word. Love it.
Manuel Trejo 766 says, "Did y'all see that timeout huddle where Coach Mitch was drilling the team when we were already up by 20 plus? Very pop like. We talked about that
Mm-hmm.
earlier. Completely agree." Our guy Michael Hunt 882 says, "At fellas, we fukin with O's.
Mm.
Scary man. Castle and Harper looking like they are going to get it. Other guys are feeling Wemby's defensive gravity. It makes their jobs easier."
Mm-hmm.
Um, 7173 Alex says Mitch already had his "I want some nasty" moment the first game in.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah, he did.
I couldn't agree with that anymore. Are there any final thoughts you got on this game, man?
No, dude, we look great. Let's hope we can keep it going. I think the last time we were 3-0 to start the season was when we first got DeMar DeRozan. So hopefully it's not one of those seasons. But maybe we can go 4-0 and change the I don't know what I'm trying to say. Outdo that year if we can.
Yeah, there you go. Change the history
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
trajectory.
Let's
Anyways,
call it like that.
projection.
Hmm.
I butchered it too.
Yeah, yeah,
Michael Hunt says defense, fundamentals, run the break, fundamentals. Dude gets it.
yeah. He
Mitch
does.
Johnson. Again, embrace the boring and mundane. Do it over and over and over again, like we're a freaking robot that's just been, we're like an assassin that's just been trained to kill
Hmm.
no matter the circumstances.
Yep. I'm training a guy at work this week,
Okay.
and next week I'm going to use that line on him.
There you go. There you go.